everyone, Steve Gage here, NASM certified personal trainer and co-owner of Engage Fitness DC. Today we're going to go over how to relieve hip tension, that nagging tightness and limiting our leg mobility tension. A lot of us are suffering from that tension because we're sitting a little more than we used to, and when we sit, especially for hours on at a time, whether it's Zoom meetings or just working on your computer or even sitting watching TV for a few hours. When we sit, a lot of the fibers in our hips, in the front and the side, they get shortened and tight. And since they're in that shortened position, they stay there, and those muscles tend to want to stay there since they've been there for a little bit. So we're going to show you how to relieve those areas of tension, again, in the front of the hip, especially in the front of the thigh, and on the outside, again, getting as much leg range of motion as possible. So first, we're going to start in a definitely familiar position in our seat. So if you know you have tight hips and suffer from a lot of hip tension, we'll start with this position low and then build up into that higher position. So we start with one leg straight out in front, just a slight bend actually. And we're going to bring that opposite leg right on top of the shin. Again, if this causes you discomfort, we can add something else. But just having that foot rest on that leg, and we're gently pressing down. You can even hold that foot there if you can't let it sit there. And just gently pressing down, feeling that stretch on the outside of the hip all the way to your glutes on the side. And you're holding it there. That 15 to 20 seconds or 3 to 4. Big inhales through the nose, big exhale through the mouth. And as we get more mobile in those hips, we can gradually move the leg, the other leg up this leg, making sure we avoid placing it on the knee because we want to avoid contact with that joint. We want to either come below or above the knee. So once we've gotten to the point where we can come above the knee, same thing, we gently press that leg down towards the floor, not slamming it, just a gentle push until you feel there's almost a wall there and you can't go any farther. And hold it there for that 15 to 20 seconds or that 3 to 4 slow inhale, exhale. And if you need a little more, you can bend this leg just a little more. So it's in an upright position, and it gives you a little more freedom to move that leg down to where you want it to be. And again, just applying that firm but appropriate pressure, holding it in that position for that desired either 3 to 4 breaths or 15 to 20 seconds. And if you'd like to take a little extra, you can use that opposite hand, grab that foot, and slowly push up with the foot as you're pushing down. So you're essentially taking that leg and slowly twisting it in that hip socket. Again, relieving that tension in that hip. But again, just finding that appropriate pressure and not twisting it real quick. You want to slowly move into this position. This is a great one to do if you've, again, been at your desk for a few hours and you're feeling that stiffness and you have a quick 5 to 10 minutes to stretch and relieve some stress. This is a great one to do and just take a few minutes. And then relax. And this is also a great time to notice if one side is a little tighter than the other, and then give that side a little more TLC. And again, getting to that desired position, start low, straight leg, and then just work on that hip and then gradually move that foot up the leg and into that opposite leg being bent. And again, just applying that firm but appropriate pressure down. And if you need that little extra, lifting that foot up. But same thing, as we're applying pressure, we're not putting pressure on the knee, right above the knee. Because that bone, that femur can hold a lot more weight and tension than that knee can. And relax. And another variation of this position you can take too is just using your body weight as the stretch. So it's not using our hands, we're just going to lean forward towards that leg, and you'll again feel that nice stretch on the outside of the hip all the way to your glutes. And you're just leaning forward, trying to keep as an upright position as we can. Avoid rounding forward because we lose a lot of that stretch. Want to keep that tall spine and just bending at your waist forward. Again, you'll feel that right on the outside of the hip all the way down to your glutes. We're just trying to get a little lower each few breaths or those few seconds if we're doing the time, and relax. And we can take the same shape on the floor. For example, if you're at home at the end of your workout or at a gym, and same thing at the end of your workout, and you want to relieve that hip tension. So we're starting in lying position, just like with the chair. If you know you have really tight hips, start that leg you're going to bring it up on, give it just a slight bend. That way there's less distance. You have to really get that leg up to get into that stretch. And then again, start on the shin or below the knee, and just try to get that leg as close to the floor as you can. And again, holding it for that 15 to 20 seconds or that 3 to 4 slow inhale, exhale. It ends up being the same amount of time. It just depends on what's easier for you to keep track of counting. And then just like in the seated version, we gradually get that leg above the knee and increase the bend in that opposite leg. That same exact position and procedure. Gently press that leg down, and again, if you need that little extra, grab that foot and pull up as you're pushing down. And relax 2 to 3 times each side, again holding it for that 3 to 4 breaths or 15 to 20 seconds. And we can add a little extra on the floor by getting into that end range position, reaching through both of those legs, grabbing behind the knee, and we're going to bring that knee nice and slow close to the chest. This is just like if we were sitting in the chair and we were leaning forward, except now we're bringing the leg to the body instead of vice versa. And just slowly bring that leg towards the chest. Again, those nice, slow, relaxing breaths for that 15 to 20 seconds. Just making sure you're still breathing. We don't want to hold tension in this position. We want to be as relaxed as possible. And then relax. And another way to, again, especially if you have that hip tension and you're having a leg day or a leg dominant day at the gym and you know that hip tension's there, this is a great exercise to help prime the body for movement and help relieve that outer as well as inner thigh tension and allowing that hip to move as it was intended. So you find a surface, whether it's a wall, beam, bar, just something you can create some distance between you and that surface. And again, far away, one leg comes in front and you're keeping this leg straight. Just a slight bend in the body and we're rocking that leg side to side. And we're using momentum to slowly get that leg farther out and farther across. Because as you come out, it stretches the inside, and as you come across, it stretches the outside. And you're just taking that leg just like a pendulum. And trying to avoid as much as you can dumping into that opposite hip. You want to keep those hips square, just moving at that hip joint. And just keep that leg straight. Way you can do that is keeping the toes pointed towards your shin. That's going to help keep that leg tight, nice and straight. And you're just rocking side to side, trying to get a little farther out and forward each time. And obviously doing the other side, 10 to 12 swings, and then switch to the other side, 2 to 3 repetitions to get that hip nice and primed and ready to go. And making sure you have enough space and you don't hit anything. Okay, I just did. And if you feel any tension or creaking, change the direction of your foot. So if you're coming in a neutral position and you hear those Rice Krispie noises, come out a little farther. See if it makes a difference. Just play around with the position to where there's no discomfort or pain. Just warming up that hip. Creating some movement, getting a nice active stretch, and getting those hips primed and ready for movement. And then we're going to move on to hitting the front of the hip. That's the area where there's a lot of tension, especially now that we're sitting more than we used to. Those fibers get short and tight, and it limits our range of motion in the hip. So one way we can relieve that tension is using a wall or a couch, because this stretch is appropriately called the couch stretch, because you can use your couch or wall at home. So you get into all fours first. Again, if you have sensitive joints, you can place a pillow or some kind of padded surface under your leg. And we're getting that foot flat. I'm going to use my chair as my invisible wall so you can see me here. So we're getting that foot as flat as we can, and the knee is behind the hip. That's where we're going to get the most stretch in that front of the hip. And depending on your flexibility, you may have to come a little farther out, a little closer. Just find a position where you can get into that kneeling and keep that foot as flat as possible. And next we bring the opposite foot up into a lunge, and this may be enough. You may feel that stretch right away in that hip. And you hang there. And then if you can get a little more range of motion, again, I have a space here, but you want to keep that foot as flat as possible. We can use either our thigh or the floor to help ourselves get up. And we want to bring the glutes as close to that floor and foot as possible. Again, keeping that foot as flat as you can against that wall or couch, and then slowly coming back, because the closer you get that glute to that foot, the more stretch you're going to feel in the front. And you can also do this stretch on the floor if for whatever reason you don't have a big solid surface to use that's behind you. So what we can do is get the feet flat and slowly sit back onto the feet. Again, trying to keep these as straight as possible. And just slowly sit back. We'll feel a little stretch under the shins, but to really focus on the hip flexors in the front, we'll have our hands behind us, and we're going to hike our hips up towards the ceiling. So nice and slow, glute bridge, and you're driving your hips forward, pushing into those hip flexors in the front. The more you push those hips, the more you're going to feel in that front of the hip. And if that position does not serve you, you can also do a standing version of that shape. Get close to a surface, whether it's your chair or even using your wall, just something to give you that little extra support. So your hand is against that surface, and we're going to take the leg that's farthest away first. We bring that heel close to your glutes. Again, if you're able to grab it, excellent. If not, you can also use that surface as that extra support. So you use that foot bent on that chair or surface, and then just, again, get those glutes as close to that ankle as you can, and keep the knees together. Because as the knees come out, we lose a lot of that stretch. We want to keep the knees close and in line with the hip. Start there. And if you need a little extra, get a little farther away from that chair and get that knee farther back. As the farther back that knee travels, the more stretch you're going to feel in the front of the hip. So whether you're holding your foot or using that chair or a wall, just get that knee behind you, feeling that nice stretch in the hip flexor in the front. And another way you can get really into that hip flexor is by using a foam roller. So a lot of individuals are tentative about using the foam roller. We're going to show you some techniques on how to safely get rid of that hip tension. So whether you have a large foam roller or a smaller one like myself, I personally like, if I'm getting into those really tight areas, I like to use a smaller one. That way I don't have to put myself on this huge foam roller. So what we do is we place this foam roller right in that hip crease, so where you bend and your waist meets your hips, that's where we want to start that foam roller, towards the middle. When you're lying down on that foam roller, start on the waist, and then slowly just move down that foam roller. So again, get right on the waist, and then you're having that foam roller move down the leg, just to where you feel that tension. And you're slowly and gently just tilting, leaning into that side, hunting for that area of tension. Once you've found it, hang in that spot for that 15 to 20 seconds, or that 3 to 4 slow inhale, exhales. And just creating small micro movements back and forth. Again, just working out that knot and those areas of tension. And another way you can add a little extra stretch is, if you're able, reach for that foot and then lift that knee up. Because again, we're getting a stretch, and now we're really honing in on that tight hip flexor in the front. And once you found that area, just create some movement, just small little wiggle back and forth, side to side, really almost like you're kneading out some dough. And then relax. And then of course, switching to the other side, because we want to relieve tension on both sides. One side may be a little tighter than the other, but we still want to relieve as much tension in both those hips as we can. So again, starting right on that hip crease. And again, we're just leaning slightly into that foam roller, just hunting for that area of tension. Whether it's right at that hip crease, that bone that sticks out, or a little farther down, we're just hunting for that area of tension. And breathe. Don't get into that mindset of holding your breath. We want to be as relaxed as possible, because that will allow that knot or area of tension to release way easier than holding tension and holding your breath. And again, if you are able to reach that foot and lift that leg up, that really pushes into the foam roller and allows you to really hone in on those tight hip flexors in the front. Just creating those small movements, inch or two above and below, side to side. Just find where you can really get into that hip. And slowly release and relax. Those are just some ways to help relieve hip tension. Like I said, especially a lot of us are sitting more than we used to. Those hip flexors in the front and on the side tend to get short and tight. So we want to relieve some of those by taking just a few moments of stretching a few times a week. Thanks for joining me, guys. I hope these stretches are helpful for relieving that nasty hip pain and tension. I'll see you guys next time. Be safe, be kind, and choose to be well. Take care.